All right, hello. So this is our unit on Hamlet. It's a 3-week unit. I'm calling it To Thine Own Self Be True, which is a really famous line from the play that you're going to come across. Not spoken by Hamlet, spoken by a lesser character, an interesting character. And we'll get into all of that, but not yet. I am flipping the script, and we are going to do something a little different with Hamlet. We're going to explore the text through the lens of the AP Literature exam first. Every other text we have studied after reading. We have read it with some lens, we have approached it with one of the strands in mind, and then most recently you conducted research on a text to deepen your knowledge of its context. So let's do the exact opposite to start us off with Hamlet. Why? Well, we're halfway through the year, we're more than halfway through, and it's time to address this central question. How should we study a text? How should you study a text? Because, like it or not, the AP Literature exam has one specific way they need you to study these texts. And we can acknowledge the shortcomings of that way this week, but also appreciate what it offers us. And I'll get into what exactly is so controversial about that. I have this belief, this, I think, evidence-based claim that this question has launched centuries of argument, factions, anger, indignation, passion, love, even violence. The way that people encounter literature, it sets the world sometimes off course. It remakes worlds. I just read a lot about the Inquisition, and I was thinking about this question. It's not so simple to just say something that you think is true via a piece of literature that you've produced. It could create ripples and tsunamis, indeed. And that has happened in history. So texts are not neutral. And how you study them says a lot about your philosophies. There are basically two large categories that have emerged over time for how you should study something. The first is study the text for what it is. Consume the text. Appreciate what it's giving you. The words on the page, stripped from their context and their backstory, without regard for authorship, for disclaimers with controversies that come along with it. Just appreciate the text itself. If you've ever fallen in love with a book, this is probably what you naturally did. You got so invested in the story, came to life for you, and that was all that mattered about it in the moment. Then there is the second way. Study a text within its context, with text. The worlds that made it, public and private, with deep respect and regard for authorship. I call them temporal winds, the things shifting around it, the implicit, explicit biography of its author and their motivations, their worldviews, and then understand the text's impact once it was released into the world. Consume its inspiration and its implications. And this is what we did most recently with Crime and Punishment, where we really tried to dig into some of the philosophical underpinnings of the text. All right, two ways. The AP Literature exam resides in the first way. But the second way is much more appealing to the world of post-secondary education. Any literature class you've been in probably is more the second way. You're appreciating some things about the text that are more nuanced or that require a little bit of research. And then if you get to college and you study literature, your professors are experts in this second way. They've produced all sorts of scholarship on something interesting about the text that is contextual. This is what we just did, and this is what I've tried to reduce in my Literary Lens document that you can see linked here to the slides and to the lecture. It is perhaps, there's my hedge, the way that we naturally encounter literature. We want to know more about the humans who made it, and we want to know more about what it meant to the people around it. We want to know about its impact. And for me, this world of study is what sets my heart on fire. I want to know about that historical moment that made the text. So why not always do it? Why does the AP Literature exam take us to the first way. If we know the AP Literature exam is claiming to be a collegiate exam, preparing you for that world of college, it even is a college class. You can get that credit. So how could it reject outright that second way? Well, it has to, right? Fairness. So the AP Lit exam will give you about 5 passages of things you've never seen before, and it will ask you to quickly analyze them. And that is fair, right? You've never seen it. You're not expected to know the context. You're not expected to know the author's biography. You can only use your skills of analysis. And that creates an even playing field for everybody who's taking the exam. Nobody has that edge of knowing more about the text. So it's fair. And they have to do it that way because otherwise they would have to give us a list of like the 15 authors and texts they were going to be evaluating us on. That would create that level playing field in a different direction, and everybody would have the information they needed. But how do you make that list? How do you look at the hundreds and hundreds of amazing authors over time from various cultures, from various walks of life, and claim that you can select the best ones for your AP Literature exam and then send it to literature teachers around the country and say, these are the ones this year? It would marginalize and silence so many voices. So they don't. Instead, they do what is the topic of this week, new criticism. Let us just give all of the students a smattering of excellent excerpts, tell them nothing or little to nothing, and see what they can do. I have a sub-question. This is an aside. If you're interested, there's a good blog post here that's linked to the slides. I'm wondering, can you actually be completely fair? Can you actually make invisible the context of those short excerpts you're pulling? Or are you just subconsciously testing whether or not students are able to quickly draw some inferences from those texts? It's a question that is very interesting to a lot of professors and teachers like me, and I think it's worth your time to consider, but it is tangential to what we're doing today. So just check out that blog post if you're interested in that. So anyway, in a nutshell, where we are is within the lens of new criticism. And new criticism is on my list of academic literary lenses. It is like formalism. It tends to consider texts as autonomous and closed, meaning that everything that is needed to understand a work is within it. The reader does not need outside sources, like the author's biography, to fully understand a text. This is from Poetry Foundation, one of my favorite sources. So this is what AP Literature likes and says they must do to allow you the best chance that you can have at understanding a text quickly and fairly. All right, so let's do that this week. And we are going to do it with Hamlet. I'm deliberately asking you not to read Hamlet yet, because you have a timed write instead to start things off. It'll be your Wednesday assignment, and you will write on Hamlet. So you're going to get to touch the text this week, but from the new criticism perspective, where you know nothing about it. Now, you probably know something about it. And this is why I wonder about this idea of fairness. But anyway, whatever you know about Hamlet is from your own life, and it's not something you're gaining in this class at this time. So lucky you if you've happened to have read it, or seen a production, or just know Shakespeare well, but you are not expected to. We will study nothing except the short excerpted text that will be on your prompt for the timed write. All right, so as soon as you finish your timed write on Wednesday, you can pick up the play and start reading it. So strange, isn't it? But that's the new criticism way. So for creative analysis, we're going to just dial into this experience of new criticism and have a meta assignment where we float above the exam and we just watch what this looks like when it's done. I have pulled another, let me pull this over. I've pulled another exam question, not Hamlet, but another Shakespeare. It's the 2009 exam. And on it, the first question was, just like you're going to experience, a long monologue from a Shakespeare character. And the students were asked to read it and make sense of it. You're not going to write that essay, but we are going to study what that student did and what the AP graders thought about it. So this is your task. It's actually a reading assignment for the most part, and a short response at the end. I have everything linked. It's also linked in the email. The question itself is the one you got to make sure you read the right document. I couldn't translate it without messing with the formatting. So you're going to read this question from the 2009 exam, and then you're going to read this exemplar student response. The student scored a 9, which is the highest score you could have gotten with the old rubric. After you've read that student response, read the AP grader's commentary about that student's essay. I'm curious what you think about all of this, especially having spent as long as we did with Crime and Punishment, trying to understand it a little bit more, trying to deepen our knowledge of character, and then the last thing you did being a research project. I am so curious what you think of an essay that is deliberately and obviously missing that context. So your response will be a response to this question. Put simply, what do you think about that student essay? Not about the passage. Don't tell me what you think about the Shakespeare passage. Tell me what you think about this essay, the one that the student wrote. What does the essay lack or gain because of its required lack of context? Do you agree with the AP graders? Do you disagree? Remember, the essay cannot explain the context for the monologue or even Shakespeare himself. It can only take up the form and content of the monologue. If you think something is missing in the response, then what is it? And if you think the response is great and excellent, why? So it's a meta week. I hope you have fun with this, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. There is no grammar assignment this week. The next big thing we'll do is the very first thing that is usually the last thing, the time to write your organization assignment on Wednesday. Let me know if you have questions. I recognize this is a little bit non-traditional for what I've done in the past.